Welcome to the History in Focus channel. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss more videos like this one. On May 28, 1946, in Germany, United States military officials organized themselves to carry out the death sentence on physician Klaus Karl Schilling, who was 74 years old. A war crimes tribunal had found Schilling guilty of conducting medical tests involving malaria on approximately 1,200 prisoners detained in concentration camps. During his trial, Schilling remained unrepentant, maintaining that his experiments were indispensable for scientific progress, an argument the court completely dismissed. In 1943, at Aitape Beach, Papua New Guinea, Leonard Sifleet, a radio operator with Australian forces, was photographed moments before being executed. The image was later discovered, with a dead Japanese officer becoming a striking document about the cruelty of armed conflict. Near Valish in September 1941, 5 Soviet individuals stood with ropes around their necks, waiting to be executed. Such executions were part of the terror strategy implemented by the Nazis, who eliminated ordinary people in invaded territories to terrorize populations and eliminate resistance movements. In April 1945, in Germany, enslaved prisoners from the Buchenwald concentration camp were rescued by American troops. This location constituted one of the largest German concentration complexes, characterized by brutal conditions. Prisoners were subjected to compulsory labor, food deprivation, torture, and murders. It is estimated that more than 56,000 individuals perished in Buchenwald. During a mass shooting in Vinnytsia, Ukraine, a German soldier was preparing to execute a Ukrainian Jewish citizen. Like various other localities under Nazi control, the city witnessed terrible massacres throughout the Holocaust. People were coerced into digging their own graves before being shot, with their remains thrown into collective pits. This photograph was located in an album belonging to a German soldier, containing on the back the notation, "The Last Jew in Vinnytsia." In 1942, in the city of Kiev, Ukraine, a German firing squad eliminated Soviet people positioned at the edge of an excavation. Throughout Nazi domination, approximately 150,000 individuals, encompassing Jews, communists, Roma, and other civilians, were killed in this area. In 1943, fearing the repercussions of their atrocities, the Nazis attempted to eliminate evidence, exhuming and incinerating the victims' corpses to conceal the exterminations. During the spring of 1940, Italian military personnel equipped with flamethrowers were positioned near the Egyptian border. Such weapons, besides their application in direct confrontations, proved efficient in siege maneuvers, being employed to destroy fortifications and neutralize enemy positions in challenging terrain. In Ukrainian territory dominated by the Nazis, a group of Jews was coerced to organize themselves for execution. It is calculated that more than 1 million Jewish people were killed by firearms in the area, in exterminations coordinated by Einsatzgruppen and regional collaborators. An Allied prisoner demonstrates the severe conditions endured under Japanese control. After the surrender of Singapore in 1942, approximately 13,000 British died from starvation, illness, and abuse throughout years of confinement. An aerial perspective of the Allied landings on D-Day. We observe here only a fraction of the ground, naval, and air troops that comprised the largest amphibious operation recorded historically, executed on June 6, 1944, to liberate the European continent from the Nazis. At 4 years of age, Istvan Reiner displays an innocent smile in a portrait captured before his deportation to Auschwitz. During that period, more than 230,000 children of Jewish origin were transported to the camp, where few managed to survive. On June 10, 1944, in Oradour-sur-Glane, France, Roger Godfrey alone survived a horrendous massacre when Nazi forces confined 643 people, encompassing 500 women and children, inside a church and set it on fire. At just 8 years old at that moment, Roger managed to flee before the church was burned, hiding in a ditch and escaping to neighboring fields. All other people who were in the church, plus various other village residents, perished. Above Nagasaki, the atomic detonation produced a nuclear mushroom that rose to more than 11 miles in altitude. The weapon, designated Fat Man, discharged a power corresponding to 21,000 tons of TNT, devastating a large part of the city. Moments before intentionally hitting the American aircraft carrier USS Essex in the Philippine Islands, a Japanese kamikaze pilot in a damaged single-engine bomber was recorded in the image. Such an attack comprised Japan's desperate tactic in the final years of the conflict, when volunteer aviators, called kamikazes, executed suicide attacks against Allied vessels. Still, this proved insufficient to alter the direction of the conflict, which already favored the Allies. Moments before being executed, Rudolf Höss, the architect of the Auschwitz concentration camp. As commander of Auschwitz, Höss established systematic elimination procedures that murdered at least 1,100,000 individuals in gas chambers and crematoriums. After the war, he was detained in 1946 and sentenced for crimes against humanity. In 1947, Höss was hanged at Auschwitz, the camp he helped design and administer. Sikh prisoners remain under custody of their Japanese captors, awaiting execution in terrible circumstances. Throughout the conflict, war captives constantly endured torture, compulsory labor, and premeditated murders, being utilized as targets in practices that demonstrated the cruelty of the Japanese military system. A weapons specialist from the RAF in the Middle East organizes a bomb for an offensive against Italian troops throughout the African campaign. The munition, still without a fuse, would be mounted on aircraft employed to reach strategic objectives, exercising an essential function in the Allied battle for control of the region. On June 4, 1945, American Air Force B-29 Super Fortress aircraft dropped incendiary bombs on the piers and other buildings in Kobe, Japan. Throughout the attack, about 500 tons of bombs were discharged, setting fire to more than half the city and killing approximately 8,000 people that day. During the Battle of Midway, the Japanese aircraft carrier Hiryu executes evasive maneuvers to escape bombs dropped by B-17 bombers from the United States Army Air Forces. Despite the attempts, the Hiryu suffered serious damage later that day, determining the fate of the Japanese fleet. On September 25, 1942, at some location in the Pacific Ocean, Japanese bombers almost grazed the sea while attacking warships and aircraft carriers from the United States. This type of offensive, executed at low altitude, constituted a frequent tactic of Japanese aviators to amplify bombing precision and hinder anti-aircraft defense of American vessels. In Kingston, London, students from a school execute an evacuation exercise utilizing gas masks. Such practices were frequent due to the danger of attacks with toxic gas, preparing the population for possible emergency situations. In April 1942, in the Philippines, prisoners of war were forced to transport the corpses of their companions who died throughout the Bataan Death March. The march compelled about 76,000 detained soldiers between Americans and Filipinos to travel approximately 62 miles under terrible circumstances. Without food, water, or rest, more than 10,000 prisoners died during the march. In 1933, during the commemoration of the National Socialist Movement's anniversary, Adolf Hitler is acclaimed while traversing the streets of Munich. The roads are filled with large crowds that applaud Hitler, evidencing the growing popular support he had conquered. The event consolidated Hitler and the Nazi Party's control over German society, while the regime strengthened its power and gained increasingly more followers. Throughout a campaign to destroy Japanese infrastructure, flames devour the city of Tarumiza, Japan, after an incendiary bombardment from the United States. It is calculated that the fire razed about 80% of the city, causing the death of 1,200 people and leaving hundreds homeless. The fire proved so intense that it persisted burning for days after the attack. In May 1942, while the oil tanker USS Neosho refueled the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, a wave invades the ship's main deck, engulfing the crew. Shortly after this photo was captured, the USS Neosho was lost in the Battle of the Coral Sea after being severely damaged by Japanese aerial attacks. A member of the French resistance displays a smile before a German firing squad. The resistance executed sabotage and espionage that aided the Allies. Several of their members were captured, but their actions proved crucial for weakening German forces in occupied France. On the morning of December 7, 1941, sailors surrounded by aircraft debris at Naval Air Station Ford Island observed the explosion of USS Shaw. The Imperial Japanese Navy executed a surprise attack against the United States Naval Base at Pearl Harbor. The action lasted just 90 minutes, but was devastating. 18 ships were sunk or damaged, about 300 aircraft destroyed, and more than 2,400 people died. During Operation Market Garden in 1944, Allied paratroopers descend over the Netherlands. Such a mission aimed to capture strategic bridges to advance toward Germany. Despite its promising start, the operation became one of the Allies' greatest failures on the Western Front. In 1944, 13 Liberty ships were sunk off the coast of Normandy to construct a breakwater that would protect invasion vessels. Comprising a prefabricated artificial port, these vessels formed a vital barrier, enabling the safe landing of troops and supplies. Jewish children from the Łódź Ghetto, Poland, are conducted for deportation to the Chelmno extermination camp. Under Nazi determinations, thousands of children were separated from their families and transported to then unknown destinations, representing one of the cruelest faces of the Holocaust. Near the crematorium at the Natzweiler-Struthof concentration camp, France, a French soldier inspects a pile of footwear. The location utilized by the Nazis witnessed the death of thousands, being the only concentration camp on French territory, liberated in 1944. Around 1944, Jews are transported in open cattle cars in Warsaw. Such deportations comprised the Nazi plan to transport thousands of individuals to concentration and extermination camps in inhumane circumstances that constantly resulted in deaths during the journey. During the Nuremberg trials, executed after the war, the defendants laughed. The tribunal prosecuted Nazi leaders for war crimes against humanity and genocide. Among the 24 main accused, 12 were sentenced to death, while others received prison sentences or were acquitted. During one of the frequent bombings in the city, the passengers of this London bus could not reach shelter in time. Indiscriminate aerial attacks throughout the conflict left little time to react, and many civilians were caught by surprise while trying to escape or seek protection. On June 14, 1940, a Frenchman sheds tears while German soldiers marched through Paris. The city, which had always been a symbol of freedom, was now under Nazi control and would remain so until 1944. The man in the photo does not cry just for the fall of his city, but for what this meant for all of France. For many, the fall of Paris was a blow almost impossible to accept. Around 1941, Jews being deported on trains to concentration camps under the supervision of Nazi officers. The deportations comprised the final solution, the systematic plan of the Nazis to exterminate the Jewish population of Europe. Many people were deceived, believing they were being relocated for work in new areas. They carried few belongings, without knowing they were going to places like Auschwitz, Buchenwald, and other extermination camps. This Jewish boy, approximately 10 years old, was captured by German soldiers after the Ghetto Uprising in 1943, being known as the Warsaw Ghetto Boy. His image became a symbol of the suffering faced by Jews under the Nazi regime. On April 17, 1943, United States Coast Guard members on the deck of Cutter Spencer observed the explosion of a depth charge while providing convoy protection against Nazi submarines. German submarines, known as U-boats, threatened Allied convoys transporting troops and supplies across the Atlantic. Cutter Spencer defended these convoys using depth charges to locate and destroy more than 700 enemy submarines. On December 1, 1945, in Italy, German General Anton Dostler being tied to a stake, moments before facing a firing squad. Dostler was the first high-ranking German officer to be punished this way after the war's end. He was tried and found guilty for having ordered the execution of 15 American soldiers captured during a mission in Italy. In Paris, French women accused of collaborating with the Nazis have their heads shaved by French resistance fighters. These women, frequently accused of maintaining personal or professional relations with German soldiers, were subjected to this public humiliation as a form of punishment. In Montélimar, France, a woman's head is shaved as punishment for associating with German soldiers. After the Nazi withdrawal, about 20,000 women were subjected to similar public humiliations throughout France, reflecting the tensions and desire for justice in the post-war period. After the aircraft carrier was severely hit by Japanese torpedoes and bombs during the Battle of the Coral Sea, crew members from the aircraft carrier USS Lexington abandoned the ship, utilizing lifeboats. Shortly after the evacuation, USS Lexington was sunk by the Americans themselves to prevent the ship from being captured. During the attack on Pearl Harbor, an aerial photo captured from a Japanese aircraft shows USS Arizona on fire at Battleship Row. Explosions in Arizona's ammunition depot caused massive destruction, with 1,177 crew members killed. On August 6, 1945, on Monday morning, a mushroom-shaped cloud rises to more than 7 miles in altitude 1 hour after the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. The bomb, called Little Boy, exploded at about 1,900 feet above ground, releasing energy equivalent to 15,000 tons of TNT. The temperature at the explosion point reached about 7,200 degrees Fahrenheit, an intensity as extreme as the sun's surface. Elizabeth Lilo Glodden before judges, being prosecuted for her participation in the assassination attempt on Adolf Hitler in July 1944. Elizabeth, together with her husband and mother, was sentenced to death for harboring a fugitive involved in the July 20th plot, a conspiracy organized by German resistance members to assassinate Hitler and overthrow the Nazi regime. The atomic bomb dropped from the B-29 bomber Bockscar on Nagasaki 3 days after the attack on Hiroshima was called Fat Man. The bomb detonated at about 1,650 feet above the city and had an estimated power of 21 kilotons of TNT, instantly killing about 39,000 people and wounding another 25,000. Fat Man was more powerful than Little Boy, but due to Nagasaki's mountainous terrain, which limited the explosion's spread, the devastation was somewhat less compared to Hiroshima. An aerial capture of Nagasaki displays the city before and after the atomic bombardment. The explosion produced a fireball 918 feet in diameter and razed everything within a radius of 1.2 miles, causing at least 74,000 deaths and wounding thousands more. During an attack by the 5th Army Air Force of the United States at Old Namlea Airport, Baru Island, in 1944, parafrag bombs fall toward a camouflaged Japanese bomber. The operation sought to dismantle Japanese aerial capacity in the Dutch East Indies. In August 1943, on Kiska Island, after the landing of Allied troops, a gravestone was discovered in a small cemetery situated among the bombed ruins. This gravestone, made and placed by Japanese Army members, marked the tomb of an American pilot who had fallen on the island during the conflict. The inscription on the gravestone said, "Sleeping here, a brave aerial hero who lost youth and happiness for his homeland. July 25th, Nippon Army. A German soldier returns home after the war and discovers that his family is no longer present. Many soldiers found their homes destroyed, their families disappeared or dead, and their properties razed after the conflict's end. The war caused great displacements of people, destruction of cities, and the loss of millions of lives. Near Yokohama, Japan, American soldiers were liberated from a prisoner camp in September 1945. After years of captivity under severe circumstances, Japanese surrender marked the end of their suffering and returned to freedom. In April 1942, in Oakland, California, a store owned by a man of Japanese descent with the sign, "I am an American." The photo was captured during a period of strong anti-Japanese sentiment in the USA after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Shortly after, in February 1942, President Franklin D. Roosevelt authorized the forced removal of more than 120,000 people of Japanese descent, most American citizens, to internment camps in remote locations in the country's interior. On May 21, 1945, Colonel Byrd gave the order for the last remaining hut at Belsen concentration camp to be burned. Before the hut was set on fire, a rifle volley was fired in honor of the thousands of dead who perished in the camp. Inside the hut, a German flag and a portrait of Adolf Hitler were placed, symbolizing the destruction of the Nazi regime and the definitive rejection of its ideology. In 1943, Lieutenant Walter Tuning scales the side of a burning aircraft to save pilot Enz Byron Johnson. Johnson was returning from a mission when the brake on his Grumman F-6F Hellcat broke upon landing on the aircraft carrier USS Enterprise. This caused fuel to leak and ignite the plane. Without thinking twice, Tuning ran to the burning aircraft, climbed the fuselage, and pulled Johnson out of the cockpit, saving his life. During an attack on Ploiești, Romania, several B-24 liberators. The mission targeted an oil refinery that supplied the German army. The dense smoke clouds indicate the bombardment's success, despite the anti-aircraft defense that made the operation very risky. During the Battle of Okinawa, an American cruiser fires its main batteries against Japanese positions. These ships, like the one in the photo, fired their powerful main batteries, which could hit targets at great distances, destroying bunkers, artillery, and other defensive positions. In 1942, a German submarine patrols the Polar Sea, operating in extreme circumstances of cold and isolation. Submarines like this comprise the U-boat fleet, which exercised a vital role in the Battle of the Atlantic, interrupting Allied supply routes and causing enormous naval losses. In the last years of the war, Waffen-SS soldiers carry artillery grenades during combat. Known for their loyalty to the Nazi regime, these soldiers participated in some of the most brutal battles, using heavy firepower to try to resist Allied and Soviet advances. SA troops formed a barrier of joined hands to block Jews from entering the University of Vienna. Such action, part of growing Nazi discrimination, reflected the systematic and violent exclusion of Jews from educational institutions and public life. At the Buchenwald concentration camp, Germany, prisoners line up for roll call. The camp housed more than 250,000 people, subject to forced labor, hunger, and brutality. Even so, many prisoners formed resistance groups, defying the imposed conditions. In May 1945, liberated concentration camp prisoners show signs of extreme malnutrition and suffering. Despite freedom, physical and emotional recovery would be a monumental challenge for those who endured Nazi horrors. After being hit by a Japanese dive bomber, the cruiser USS Santa Fe approaches the aircraft carrier USS Franklin. The attack devastated the ship, detonating an ammunition depot and causing the death of 724 sailors. But the crew managed to save the vessel from total destruction. On June 21, 1944, an American Navy soldier finds a Japanese family hidden in a cave on the slopes of Saipan. The family, composed of a mother, 4 children, and a dog, was hidden because they feared for their lives, influenced by Japanese propaganda that stated American soldiers would be merciless with civilians, encouraging many to hide or even take their own lives. On April 3, 1945, Hans-Georg Henke, a 16-year-old German soldier, cries upon being captured by the 9th U.S. Army in Germany. Henke, like many other German teenagers, was recruited in the war's final moments when Germany was about to be defeated. Without adequate training, these young people were sent to the front line, often without fully understanding what they were facing. In July 1943, off Gela during the Allied invasion of Sicily, an American cargo ship loaded with ammunition was hit by a bomb dropped by a German aircraft and exploded. The explosion, devastating, highlighted the dangers faced by supply vessels in amphibious operations. United States Marines land under enemy fire on Iwo Jima. The battle involved about 70,000 American soldiers facing 21,000 Japanese defenders. The volcanic terrain and fortifications made advancement slow, resulting in more than 26,000 dead and wounded in 36 days of fighting. In 1941, during Operation Barbarossa, German soldiers advanced to take a Russian bunker. This offensive involved more than 3 million German soldiers and their allies, facing the Red Army in battles that resulted in millions dead, with 5 million Soviets captured in the first months. After the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, the warships West Virginia and Tennessee burn in flames. The West Virginia suffered multiple torpedo and bomb impacts, while the Tennessee, partially protected, was damaged by fires. In March 1945, the German city of Bocholt is seen from above, enveloped in dense columns of smoke, result of an RAF bombardment. During the attack, more than 150 tons of bombs were dropped, destroying about 80% of the city. The objective was to dismantle infrastructure vital to the Nazi war effort. In January 1945, a pile of prostheses found at Auschwitz after its liberation evidences the scale of genocide. These prostheses belonged to victims who, upon arriving at the camp, were stripped of their belongings before being murdered. In 1940, British and French troops wait anxiously on Dunkirk beach for evacuation during Operation Dynamo. Surrounded by German forces, about 338,000 soldiers were rescued in an improvised operation that utilized hundreds of vessels, from military ships to civilian boats. American paratroopers jumped from aircraft during Operation Market Garden in Holland. Despite expectations to capture strategic bridges and advance rapidly, the Allies faced strong German resistance, resulting in heavy casualties and mission failure. Before the attack on Pearl Harbor, Japanese pilots receive instructions planned to neutralize the USA and ensure advances in the Pacific. Although initially effective, Japan underestimated the American reaction, which resulted in the USA entering the war, altering the course of the global conflict. In July 1943, 2 light A-20 Havoc bombers from the USA are seen in action during a mission against Kokos, Indonesia. The operation targeted Japanese strategic targets in the region. One of the bombers was hit by anti-aircraft fire shortly after dropping its bombs, falling into the sea. Aboard USS Hansford, a burial at sea is conducted for a victim of the Battle of Iwo Jima. Ceremonies like this were a tribute to fallen soldiers while the campaign advanced with major battles and significant losses in the Pacific. During the Battle of Midway, a United States Navy photographer captured this impressive aerial view of a Japanese Mogami-class heavy cruiser severely damaged by naval bombs. The vessel was left in ruins, with armor plates, decks, and superstructures reduced to debris. The B-17 bomber Wee Willie lost a wing after being hit by 88mm anti-aircraft fire. The aircraft, unable to fly with just one wing, crashed while participating in a mission against airfields and ammunition depots north of Berlin. In 1941, Soviet Katyusha rockets are fired on the Eastern Front. Known as Stalin's organs, these multiple launchers could fire up to 48 rockets in less than a minute, covering large areas. Fast and mobile, the Katyushas were essential in Soviet resistance against German forces. On April 18, 1942, American B-25B bombers await on the deck of USS Hornet before the famous Doolittle raid. The aircraft, adapted to take off from aircraft carriers, launched the first aerial attack on Tokyo after Pearl Harbor. At the beginning of the Battle of Midway, TBD-1 torpedo planes deployed their wings on the deck of USS Enterprise before attacking Japanese aircraft carriers. This offensive was crucial for USA victory, marking the turning point in the Pacific War. The moment after a Japanese kamikaze plane hit the deck of aircraft carrier USS Saratoga. The attack caused significant damage to the ship and losses among the crew, evidencing the desperation of Japanese tactics at the conflict's end. In December 1939, Royal Air Force bombers attacked German warships at Heligoland, Norway. It was one of the first British aerial offensives aimed at weakening the German Navy. Despite limited impact, these missions marked the beginning of the aerial campaign against Axis targets. During a Nazi rally in Dortmund, Germany, Adolf Hitler observes and addresses about 30,000 soldiers. With his absolute power and oratory skill, Hitler exercised enormous influence over the masses, guiding the country toward war and territorial expansion. Near Leningrad in 1943, 2 Soviet snipers advance on snowy terrain. Using camouflaged clothing to blend with the environment, they eliminated enemies at distance, protecting key positions in one of the longest and most devastating battles of the war. At Pearl Harbor, December 7, 1941, bursts of anti-aircraft projectiles cross the sky while USS Arizona burns. The attack destroyed 19 ships, including 8 battleships, and caused more than 2,400 deaths, marking the USA's entry into the world conflict. In February 1945, United States Marines advance on Iwo Jima using flamethrowers to confront entrenched defenders. These weapons, capable of launching flames more than 65 feet, were essential for neutralizing bunkers and fortified tunnels, one of the main Japanese defenses on the island. On Iwo Jima, United States Marines crouch behind a rock for protection while detonating a cave connected to a Japanese bunker. Japanese forces used networks of tunnels and underground fortifications, making combat on the island extremely difficult. Around 1942, Jewish prisoners organized in lines. The yellow triangle on uniforms represented Jews, red political prisoners, green criminals, pink homosexuals, and purple members of persecuted religious groups. At the end of 1939, in occupied Krakow, Jews were obligated to use the back of streetcars. Bilingual signs in German and Polish segregated Jews and non-Jews, symbolizing Nazi oppression that marked daily life during the beginning of occupation in Poland. In Hamburg, circus elephants Kiri and Meni help remove a destroyed car, utilized by civil authorities to clean debris during and after the war. With limited resources, circus animals were improvised for heavy tasks, contributing to cities' recovery. During the Battle of Berlin in 1945, a German soldier, visibly exhausted, sits in front of the Reichstag while the building burns. This confrontation marked the final moments of war in Europe, with the city reduced to ruins and Soviet forces advancing decisively. In London, a newspaper vendor holds a sign announcing the beginning of war. Germany's attack on Poland triggered the reaction of Allied powers, leading the United Kingdom to declare war and starting a conflict that quickly spread throughout Europe. In 1942, the shipwreck of HMAS Armidale left the crew adrift in shark-infested waters. A reconnaissance pilot took this photo and alerted about rescue, which saved 49 people, while many died before help arrived. In 1945, Mark left by a kamikaze on HMS Sussex. These pilots, considered martyrs in Japan, conducted fatal missions to defend their country, sacrificing themselves in the name of honor and resistance against enemy advances. On May 7, 1945, at Dam Square, Amsterdam, civilians hide from shots fired by German sailors 2 days after Nazi surrender. Up to 32 people died in the attack, which occurred during victory celebrations. In 1945, Dutch waved to British Avro Lancaster aircraft. These bombers participated in Operation Manna, dropping supplies for starving civilians in occupied Netherlands in the war's last months. This action helped save thousands of lives amid the crisis caused by food shortage. During the Blitz, victims of a Nazi aerial attack in London are buried. Between 1940 and 1941, incessant bombings killed more than 40,000 civilians. Collective funerals were common due to the high number of dead, while the city struggled to rise again amid destruction. During 8 months of attacks, a building collapses amid Blitz bombings. More than 1 million homes were destroyed or damaged in London. The city faced up to 200 aerial raids per night, forcing thousands of people to seek refuge in underground shelters and subway stations. After intense Luftwaffe bombings, women walk among ruins on the outskirts of Coventry, England. The city was target of devastating attacks that destroyed entire neighborhoods, including the iconic medieval cathedral. Around 1944, a woman runs to save her life while buildings burn in a French city set on fire by retreating German troops. Fire was used as a tactic of total destruction, leaving communities in ruins.